Well, we finally got the Beach Boys documentary. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's documentary review of the Disney Plus original movie, The Beach Boys. This is a documentary that is directed by Frank Marshall and Tom Zimney. All right, guys, so we finally have the Beach Boys documentary. It's, of course, a documentary of the famous group that created some of the most popular songs of the 60s and 70s. It is also considered one of the greatest bands of all time, thanks to people like, of course, Brian Wilson, Mike Love, Al Jardine, Carl Wilson, Dennis Wilson, so on and so forth, Glenn Campbell. And this documentary is about an hour and 55 minutes, and it basically chronicles who the Beach Boys were, the problems, the successes, the nature of how Brian Wilson was kind of like a genius when it came to musical lyrics and stuff like that. And it's in essence a pretty straightforward, talking headpiece where they interview people from the band, people that really love the band, whether it be famous people like Janelle Monáe. And it goes into the details of who the band was and what they did. And if you don't know who the Beach Boys are, which I'm pretty sure you do, known for doing stuff like Surf and Safari, God Only Knows, I Get Around, so on and so forth. Pet Sounds is one of the most popular, most famous albums of all time. And they're known as, kind of like the American Beatles in a lot of respects. And they're very much set in the California landscape of the 60s and 70s and so on and so forth. So it was only a matter of time that the Beach Boys would get a documentary. I mean, there's decades upon decades of documentaries of not only bands like the Beatles and Rush and David Bowie, but the Beach Boys are a popular band, so it was going to happen eventually. And it seems like, of course, Frank Marshall, who's a famous producer, and Tom Zimney are they love the Beach Boys and stuff like that. So this was a documentary that was going to happen, and it makes sense to be on Disney Plus because they feel like a very wholesome band, even though they had a lot of issues when it came to drug use and behind the scenes problems and stuff like that. And it was it's one of those things where it's like, okay, let's learn a little bit about the Beach Boys, but in all aspects, is this going to be a documentary that's going to encompass the Beach Boys? Is going to do a nice job with the Beach Boys? I didn't know. Like I said, I know a little bit about the Beach Boys. They're not my favorite band, but I appreciate the music. God Only Knows is one of my favorite songs of all time. But yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. So here we are. Documentary is releasing as this review, and my official opinion on this documentary is it's a well put together, slick documentary, but it's well worn, well treaded documentary space. It doesn't really do anything new. It's insightful, but it feels like very surface level documentary making. And it's pretty well documented that Brian Wilson had a lot of issues, and my main issue is with this documentary is not the fact that they kind of heap praise upon Brian Wilson, who's very famous and very good at what he did, but also had a lot of issues when it came to his mental state. But it doesn't to me personally feel like they delve deep really hardly into the other band members. They're kind of surface level interviews. They'll talk about Glenn Campbell a little bit, and they'll talk about a couple other individuals who came, like Al Jardine and stuff like that. But it doesn't really dig deep into the band itself. It feels like it's going from beat to beat to beat to beat to beat. You could spend 2 episodes of a TV series just talking about Pet Sounds because of how famous and how important that album is. But it feels like there's only 15, 20 minutes at the most that they spend on it. And maybe it's the simple fact that because this is a documentary movie instead of a documentary TV show, similar unlike with the Beatles, Let It Be, I think it was Let It Be or whatever it was that they did for Disney Plus with Peter Jackson. I don't think this documentary really succeeds in treading anything new. It feels like a very safe documentary. It delves deep into some parts of his mental state when it came to Brian Wilson, but it doesn't fully embrace, unlike something like Love and Mercy, which was the movie that, of course, starred Paul Dano and John Cusack, about Brian Wilson's mental state. And, to be fairly honest, that was actually a really good movie, by the way. But it's not saying that this documentary is bad. Like I said, it's not. If you don't know anything about the Beach Boys and you're interested, there is a lot to learn here. But if you know about who the Beach Boys were, and you've kind of listen to their music and you love the Beach Boys, you're not learning anything new here. That's the problem with these types of documentaries, is even though you learn about, you know, Janelle Monáe's, like how she became infatuated with the Beach Boys because her, you know, a family member bought the records, that's cool, but then they just kind of like leave it alone. They don't really go into much detail about it. And like they have a lot of cool like interviews and stuff like that, but it's just like very kind of EPK or video press kits in a lot of respects, where they took footage from like, you know, an interview that you could find on YouTube and then stuck it in this movie. And I keep hearkening back to something like David Bowie's documentary they did about, I think about Ziggy Stardust or whatever it was that came out a year or two ago. And it was unique. It was interesting. It was insightful. It did something really creative with like the music and how it formed around the documentary. But here it's so straightforward that it's like, I've seen this type of documentary before. You're just doing it with a new band. You're not doing anything unique. You're not, especially for being somebody like Frank Marshall, and they just don't add anything new. It really is kind of sad to watch. And I was really kind of crestfallen or heartbroken a little bit, because I was expecting something interesting and I didn't get anything interesting. I just got some clips and some songs and them taking on the Beatles, which is very well documented and stuff like that. And I don't know. It feels like that it tries, but it doesn't try hard enough. It doesn't feel like it goes deep enough and dark enough. And it feels like, you know, we're going to celebrate, which they should. You know, the Beach Boys should be very celebrated, as they should be. But this documentary just doesn't do it. So I was not a huge fan of this documentary. I didn't feel like it added or justified anything that we didn't already know. And, you know, outside of just celebrating who the Beach Boys was, you can do that by watching their videos, by listening to Pet Sounds, by listening to, you know, Shutdown Volume 2 or Surfing Safari, Surfing USA. That's how you celebrate them. And this documentary, as hard as it tries, it doesn't do a very good job of it. So overall, not a big fan of the Beach Boys documentary. It feels very much like a slick marketing ploy than it does a documentary itself. But that's my take on the Beach Boys documentary for what it's worth. Like I said, if you don't know anything about the Beach Boys, then, you know, check it out for yourself. But otherwise, that's where I stand. So anyways, with that said, thank you so much for watching my review on the Beach Boys documentary, now on Disney+. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite Beach Boys song is. What did you think of this documentary if you watched it? Let me know if you found anything new out of it, all that good stuff. So otherwise, if you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button, enjoy Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell, top the fun is coming next. If you like this video, awesome, hit that like button, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.